Welcome to Season 2 of the Empower to Heal podcast. I'm your host, Dina Tipsherini, and I'm so excited to take you on a journey through the ups and downs of motherhood. Together, we are going to learn, prepare for, and unearth all things motherhood, because I believe that exposure and awareness can lead to empowerment. So buckle up for an unfiltered, raw, and insightful journey. Hello and welcome back to the Empower to Heal podcast. I'm so excited that you're here with us today because we have a super powerful guest speaker with us today. This is somebody that I personally trust and would trust with my own child if I met her when my child was little, and somebody that I connect most of the families I work with that are struggling with sleep to. She is a top referral source for me and somebody that I invite to be guest speakers at things that I create or at another organization I partner with. And her wisdom is just infinite and her presence is calming. I'm so excited to have her on here today. I'm introducing you to Lauren. She is a certified baby led sleep specialist with Holistic Mama Sleep. And she's also a licensed social worker. Whoop, whoop. Fellow social worker in the house. She's a mom of two sweet young babies. Transitioning into parenthood really ignited her passion for helping new mothers, for guiding parents in understanding normal infant sleep patterns, and promoting sleep without having to resort to separation-based sleep training methods. Cannot be stressed enough. There are ways to support sleep without having to separate from your baby. So Lauren believes that she's empowering parents to trust their intuition and embrace their unique child and unique parenting journey is going to support them with every aspect of parenting, not just sleep. And her goal is to provide compassionate guidance and practical tools to help families establish sleep habits while nurturing strong attachment bonds. Now, this comes not only from her being a certified baby led sleep specialist, but also personal experience of a mom of two. And so I really want to just invite you and welcome you in your wealth of knowledge and your relatable experiences onto the podcast today.
Thank you so much. I'm so excited to be here. I love talking about sleep and really just like what is biologically normal and what we can expect from our babies. So thank you so much for having me today.
Oh my gosh, it is my absolute pleasure. I know when I reflect on my time with my son, I'm sure a lot of us end up doing this, but I created a nursery in our house for him and he had his own room and his own crib. He didn't sleep in his crib until I turned it into a toddler bed. But he had this whole space set up for him and I could not find it within me to separate from him. And there were moments in time where I really felt pressured and people had told me like your son smells you, he's not going to want to he's not going to fall asleep. He's going to wake up more cuz he knows you're there. And it didn't feel good inside me, but I tried once for a nap to lay him down in his crib and let him cry for like a minute before I broke down and I was like my body can't handle this. Like this doesn't feel right. And I didn't know, I didn't have the language, I didn't have the education at the time to know that the instincts that I had were spot on. And all I could hear in my brain was what my parents or people I love and that care deeply about it for us were recommending about sleep because of what our society's kind of been trained to separate from our baby so young. So I really just would love your experience, your insight on this because I know I'm not alone in having this experience.
Yes, I mean, I love just a few things that you just said because the nursery thing, I think we all as a society, it's like what we focus on, right? It's like when we
Mhm.
get married, we focus on the wedding. Do we focus as much on the marriage? I don't know. But the same when we have a baby, we are like so excited. And I totally get it. A very aesthetically pleasing nursery is like so fun. And it's so great to create that space. But what is missing, I feel like, in our society is access to education, spending that pregnancy time really preparing for what is expected of our babies and why they're going to sleep the way that they most likely are going to sleep. As well as last night I actually taught a class and one of the moms was like, it's interesting because I was a nanny and the parents were very like okay with crying and like sleep training, if you want to call it that. And so I would just do what they told me to do, which would be to put the baby in the crib and leave and let them cry. And she's like, it really didn't bother me. Like it just is what that's what the parents wanted. That's what I did. And then she was sitting here in my class with her 8 month old, and she's like, I can't put my baby in the crib for 1 minute and listen to him cry. And I was like, ah, that's your instincts. Like, and how beautiful is that? Like, that is literally biologically designed. You and your baby are in this beautiful dance of an attachment relationship. And because of that, you have instincts that help guide you not only with sleep, but in how you raise that child. And when your intuition is screaming at you, listening to it is such a gift to yourself
Oh
and
my
to your child.
goodness. So well said. There's something about parenting, and I don't know if it's just today's day and age or how isolated we parent. It's really difficult to develop and trust your intuition rather than just scrolling for advice after advice or like getting in all this like feedback from people around you. It's hard to find that grounding. And what you're mentioning about intuition, like that doesn't just serve us for sleep, that serves us for the rest of parenthood, for the rest of our
Right.
lives.
Right. Yes, absolutely. Yeah, I mean, the like scrolling, I get it. We all scroll, right? Sometimes it's just we need that mindless whatever. But when I am talking to a lot of my clients, I'm like, make sure you're curating your Instagram or whatever it is you're scrolling on to be in alignment with how you feel. Because if you're following, as I once was, before I had my child, I followed a very popular sleep trainer for years. I don't know why. She was just on my feed, and I had in my mind before my first child was born, that she was going to sleep through the night and she was going to do it early. And it's actually pretty hilarious to me that I say that out loud now. But I was constantly taking in this content that really spoke to me, that like you have to train your baby to sleep and this is what should happen, and just kind of like these expectations around sleep. And it's funny, I think within maybe 5 days of having my baby, I unfollowed her and I've never looked back. um she's just not, personally not in alignment with like how I approach parenting now. But I think it's really helpful to be just mindful in what you're taking in, because there is so much advice, and it doesn't only come from social media. It can come from like your well-meaning mother-in-law or a friend.
Mhm.
Especially with sleep, I think people are really passionate about how to get your baby to sleep or how to approach things like that. But just being mindful that every single baby is different, just like every adult is different, right? Like you and I are different. We have different personalities and temperaments, and I'm sure we sleep differently and need different things to sleep. Your baby and your sister's baby and all the babies of the world have different temperaments, and that directly impacts sleep. So
Mm.
just being mindful of what you're taking in from whatever source that may be can be really helpful in navigating those, especially those early days as a new
Yes.
parent.
Yeah, there are so many different approaches that people share about to support sleep. And the one you're
Yeah.
certified in is baby led training, or it's not training. What is it? Like, what
No.
do you call
Yeah.
it?
Yeah, so I my certification program is called Baby Led Sleep Certification Program, and I really am just taking a holistic approach to sleep that is really rooted in science. So, what is biologically normal for our babies and why? Um, I I guess I could jump a little bit into like how I got here, if that is
Yeah,
helpful.
go for it.
Um, so, like I already said a little bit, I followed this, very popular sleep trainer. I had in my mind, I said it out loud, my baby's gonna sleep through the night by 3 months old. And then she arrived. And I will say that actually as a newborn, she slept pretty well. Some newborns are very wakeful. She wasn't. She was sleeping, I think, through the night by a pretty early age, like 3 months old. Um, and but everywhere I would go, I remember going to the dentist and the doctor. The only thing people ever asked me about was how was she sleeping. And even though she was sleeping well, I was like bothered by the only thing that people were interested in about my baby was her sleep patterns. Because
Mm.
there's so much more to her, right? Like, what's her personality like? What is she like? What are you seeing from her? What are her milestones? Whatever. We could go on and on. And I started to realize how obsessed we are as a society with sleep, right?
Mm. Yes.
And I was speaking to a mom at my class last night, and she said, yes, it makes you feel like a bad parent because you are asked, how does your baby sleep? And when you say, like, oh, well, they sleep, they don't, they're up all night or whatever, like, they're like, oh, what are you doing? When it has nothing to do with you. It's all about the temperament of your child. So, anyways, as we approach that 4-month mark, which if you're not familiar, it's very common for babies to kind of go through a sleep progression at the 4-month mark. This is due to a lot of things, could be physical milestones, but also the sleep, the brain, the architecture of the brain is actually shifting, and your infant is going from more infant like sleep cycles to adult like sleep cycles. So they have their brain is exploding with development, and this can cause a lot of wakes at that 4-month mark. For my daughter, she went from sleeping through the night to waking every 15 minutes all night long. And the first night, my husband and I were like, okay. And the second night, the third night, so on and so forth. Um, we were just I didn't know what to do. We just were very like at a loss, and I'm someone who definitely likes to like externally process what's going on. So I would speak to friends and family members about our situation, and it seemed like everyone I spoke to was like, "Well, you have to sleep train her. That you have to just put her in a room and let her cry it out, and then she'll have it figured it out." And I just knew that that was not in alignment with what I just couldn't do it. That was my intuition telling me like that's not what she needs. Um, so at that point, just got really curious about sleep and like, okay, well, what's happening and why? This is when I found the Isla Grace sleep certification program, which is what I eventually enrolled in. But I got really engrossed in just learning more about the biological reasons that our babies are waking, what they're going through, that development. Um, and at the time, I really was very opposed to bed sharing, any sort of like co-sleeping. I really subscribed to that very like new age societal model that any and all forms of bed sharing and co-sleeping were unsafe. Which is funny now, knowing who I am and what I've done with my babies. But um, one night, probably about a month in, we were so exhausted. We were up all night. We'd get up, we'd support her, put her back down, and she'd wake back up within 20 minutes. And one night I was in my bed feeding her, and we were so exhausted, I just fell asleep with her. Now, of course, this was really done in an unsafe way because my bed wasn't set up for safe bed sharing, and all of that. But we did fall asleep, and we slept, I think it was something like 7 to 8 hours straight. Now, we had not slept more than like maybe 30 minutes at a time for like a month. And then we slept 8 hours, and it just dawned on me. I woke up and I'm like, I was so desperate for the answer. I was seeking out all the support. What can I do? What can I do? Really that anxiety was high, right? Like what do I do to get her to sleep? And the answer all along was literally me. I was
Mm.
her answer. All she needed was comfort. She needed to be close. Knowing what I know now about attachment, which we could talk about if we get into it because I just find it so interesting, but knowing what I know now about attachment and the relationship, it is not a surprise in the slightest that she was just protesting being separated from me. Her alarm and her anxiety went way up when she was separate from me or my husband. So at that point, I researched safe bed sharing. I read the book Safe Infant Sleep by Dr. James McKenna. If you haven't heard of him, he's so wonderful. He has really spent his life dedicated to researching safe bed sharing. He has a mother baby infant sleep lab at the University of Notre Dame, and he just does so much research about how like what happens when you bed share with your baby and how that can be done safely, and how a mother's breath actually like when you release CO2, it causes your baby to release CO2, so it actually encourages breathing
Uh,
patterns. So anyways, I read his book Safe Infant Sleep, got myself all set up our bed, and then yeah, we bed shared for until she turned about a one, and then at that point she was ready. She didn't want to bed share with me anymore. But anyways, at that point, around 5 months is when enrolled in my certification class. Like my background, like you already mentioned, is in mental health, so I already um, was used to supporting children and adults, but my passion really shifted from supporting like school age children up to like that adult age to really supporting new moms and young babies. I think the mental health of our babies is often forgotten, but now I'm just so passionate about supporting, that like mother baby dyad. So yeah, after about maybe 9 months of that program, I started my business, and now it's probably been like 3 years, a little bit less. And I just am like I get so much energy just talking about this because all I want now is to share what I know with other moms and help give them like sense of peace that comes with knowing you are meeting your child's needs.
yes. Oh my goodness. I could listen to you speak all day long. You have such beautiful, like, nuggets of wisdom that you sprinkle in everywhere. A piece of what you share that really resonates with me is, like, that level of exhaustion that you had when your baby wasn't sleeping. I remember those days, and for me, it was a little bit different because I was, pumping exclusively, and so in
Mm,
order to get my son's next bottle, I had to be awake and pumping and, like, working for it so that
yeah,
then I could feed him, so, like, my stretches of sleep were very short for a long time because of that, but I recall that, like, panicky feeling of, "I'm doing something wrong, I'm not doing this right, like, I'm so exhausted, I don't know what to trust anymore, like, is this
mhm,
exhaustion? Is this fear? Is this intuition? Like, is this somebody else's voice in my head?" It was
right,
just so hard to gather that. And for us, like coming from my perspective, like living in the perinatal mental health world, our sleep is foundational. Like,
mm,
sleep is medicine, sleep is healing. If we're not getting enough chunks of good sleep, we will start experiencing the anxiety, the
mhm,
depression, the overwhelm, the intrusive thoughts, our brain not shutting off, the tricks that our mind plays on us. And it can really begin to snowball and spiral
yeah,
us out. And sleep is one of the biggest cornerstones for this. And this is something I teach in my program. So I have an online course that's preparing people for the first year. It's called the Empowered First Year. And it's all about preparing your mental health and your relational health for that first year after having a baby. And sleep is one of the cornerstones of that program. And I can only teach so much on it because I'm not certified. I don't have this education and this background that you have, that you already alluded to around attachment and developmental stages and what's appropriate and what's normal, and how do we lean into how humans have grown as a species to rest and to heal and to grow together and to nurture your infant with that connection and that bond. I can only
right,
teach so much on that. But as you're talking about that, like, I just feel in my heart of hearts, like, this is the information that we need to be screaming on the rooftops, normalizing, so that we trust when we're in that exhausted state, we trust our inner voice rather than our inner critic. We
right,
trust our inner knowing rather than scrolling for other answers or trying to separate it from our baby and see how it goes.
right.
Are you on the brink of parenthood, eagerly anticipating the arrival of your little one? Take a proactive step towards preparing for the whirlwind journey ahead by joining our waitlist for the Empowered First Year Postpartum Prep course. Designed with your needs in mind, this online 4-week program offers a comprehensive blend of education, skill building, and community support to guide you through the demanding postpartum season. Don't navigate this transformative time alone. Click the link in the show notes below to join our next cohort and embark on your journey to parenthood with confidence.
And I think you touched upon such an important topic in that sleep is like foundational, right? We all need sleep to function. If we have a baby who isn't sleeping, that could be so difficult. This obviously brings into play like much larger societal issues, and that we are meant to live in a village where we have support from moms and aunts and friends and whoever that might be. And we don't. I think most people in this current day and age don't even sometimes have family support nearby. So you're really doing it on your own. And if you are a working mother, that we are adding up the layers of difficulty. And it can just be so important to make sure that we're including our partner and leaning on our partner to get some rest, taking advantage of any support outside that we do have, like making sure that we are getting that sleep as much as we're able to, of course. Even something like, 1 4-hour stretch a night is so
Yes.
it is so changing. Like it's not like you have to sleep for 9 hours straight in order to be rested. Like, no, the research really does show us, like, if you can get like a 4-hour stretch and then you're kind of woken up periodically throughout the night, like that is different. Um, but oh gosh, you said something else and I was like, um,
Real quick, I want to speak to that 4-hour
yeah.
stretch while you're recalling it. So I remember I went to a course on postpartum insomnia, and it's such a delicate thing to navigate because there's a lot of factors that are out of our control, right? When we're
Hmm.
trying to figure out our own sleep and our body's just wiring up. But one thing that they shared that I was going to say before you brought up the 4-hour stretch was, like, how do we get a 5-hour stretch, right? And 4 to 5 hours is similar in nature. But one approach that they were discussing of leaning on your support system or your partner, if you have one, was okay, if you are nursing and you are the only way that that baby's going to get fed and they're hungry,
Mhm.
can somebody bring the baby to you
Mhm.
while you're laying down in bed resting, like latch on, nurse, take the baby when they're full, do anything that they need to, and get that baby back to sleep so that you can get your chunk of sleep. And when she said that, I was like, oh my gosh, so many moms have asked me how, like, I can't, I'm nursing. They have to be with me. And I think there's a piece that you talked about before too around how do you safely co-sleep inside lying nursing so that you can
Mhm.
lay down and nurse versus like getting up and having to be in a rocking chair to nurse. But there's so many little things that we can learn if we pass down this wisdom and this knowledge, which when we
Right.
lived in villages, we had elders to rely on who
Yep.
would teach us this and naturally show us this and naturally do this, right? They weren't all sitting up in rocking chairs. Like
Right.
they were helping us, teaching us how do you nurse in this way? How do we do this? And
Right.
there's just I don't know, like this mindset of that's an impossible hurdle to get over if I'm the sole source of food and my baby's hungry every couple of
Right.
hours. It's not impossible. There's ways to do
Right.
it.
Right. Honestly, sometimes when I'm working with clients, sometimes it gets emotional because I kind of push back, like, well, do you have a partner? How's your partner involved? Well, I'm breastfeeding. And then mom kind of becomes like that default parent where
Yeah.
baby only wants mom. Mom's the only one that can wake up at the night. But no, let's get creative and figure out like we can meet our baby's needs and have some creative solutions. So sometimes I'll say, like, maybe mom goes to bed at like 7 o'clock. If you're tired enough, you'll be able to fall asleep at 7 o'clock. Maybe you pump right before bed. And then dad puts baby to sleep at 8 or whatever time baby's bedtime is with that bottle. And then baby sleeps, let's say 2 hours, right? That's like on the lower end, but 2 hours. Then maybe mom was able to get 3 to 4 hours of sleep right there at the start of the night. On the other hand, if you have a husband or a partner who's at home in the morning, then maybe when the baby wakes at 6 or 7 a.m., you just pass the baby, you feed the baby and pass him off, and then you get to go back to sleep and you gather just even a couple more hours of sleep can be so pivotal.
Mhm.
I definitely love the suggestion of no having someone, whether that could be like a postpartum doula, your mom, your husband, your partner, whoever that is, bringing baby to you so you're barely waking, like side lie, catch that baby, have them take the baby away, change them, put them back to sleep. Like not having to physically get up, get out of bed is so much different than, you know, having to wake up and do all of the things.
Yes.
And definitely this is where I feel like as a society, if you're a mom who really has that intuition and wants to follow it and wants to be responsive and meet your baby's needs, but you also are afraid of co-sleeping, of bed sharing, then you're in this situation where you might be getting out of bed every 2 hours all night long. And that is exhausting. That's that is a recipe for disaster. It is a recipe for falling asleep in a rocking chair, and that is one of the most unsafe things you can do.
Mhm.
Is to fall asleep in a rocking chair. And what I just hate is that you don't get this information. No one's told. Actually, the number of clients that I've spoken to that are like, well, sometimes we just fall asleep in the rocking chair so that, we're not, in the bed. But you're not in the bed, but you're in the rocking chair. That's more unsafe. That's more unsafe. The research shows us it's more unsafe because of that suffocation risk. But we're not giving parents access to this information. So
Mhm.
I wish so much so that we could just give all parents access to how to safely bed share. What are the things that you need to do in order to do this? And then let it be their choice. And if they choose to, great. And if they don't, great. That's totally up to you. But then we could avoid, I feel like, so many situations where parents are utterly exhausted, falling asleep on couches, falling asleep in rocking chairs in super unsafe ways.
Oh my gosh. Yes, 100%. I think the rocking chair piece is not shared ever.
Yeah.
Like, this is the first time I'm hearing someone say, I mean, logically, I understand it's more unsafe, but this is the first time I'm hearing somebody speak those words out loud,
Yeah.
saying no. No, like being in the bed is much more safe. And
Right.
preparing your bed for bed sharing isn't very
Yeah.
complicated. It's
No.
not it's not complicated. You don't have to buy a bunch of things. Like it's 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 very intuitive once you start learning about it.
Yes.
And that's far more accessible than having to have a rocking chair, having to get up and move about.
Right.
And like I also can we bring it back to the attachment piece that you shared of like You shared just a tiny little sliver of the breathing, right? Breathing
Mhm.
with your infant and how your exhale allows them to exhale and relax and release. And I think it's also true, like when I inhale my son, like that sounds weird, but like when I'm like, like we all smell our babies, they smell like
Yeah.
magic. But like when you are inhaling and you have their scent and you're like, that creates such a relaxing nature for you, but that's
Right.
also for them too. Like my
Yeah.
son loves the way I smell, right?
Yeah.
And we just went through a rough patch and we had he's experiencing his first experience of grief. And what has been the piece of the puzzle that's made the difference is he's falling asleep in bed with me again. And in the middle of the night, like my husband will move him into his own bed so that we can get a decent sleep without getting kicked because he's
Yeah.
7 and he's big.
Yeah. Yes.
But holding on to me and breathing me in allows him to actually slow down, rest, and feel safe in
Right.
this really scary, hard season that we've been in. And that
Right.
brings it back to the basics of what you just shared.
Right. I mean, think about that. He's 7 and you're giving him that gift of safety. And just because he's 7, you guys are still in that dance of an attachment relationship, and separation from you is still going to be, that is still a threat to the relationship, right? Of course, it's all about how we bridge that separation as they get older. But just like allowing him to rest in your presence, that is how we help our children grow. And it is the same for our very youngest members of society. Like they truly aren't, if you want to get into the science of it. um, uh, Human babies are actually considered to be like exterogestators, which means that they complete their gestational period on the outside. So all of the things that they have when they're in that maternal uterine environment, constantly fed, held, warmth, all of those things, we're supposed to match that on the outside. And when we're able to constantly hold and love and feed and be with them, that actually helps regulate that central nervous system, calming anxiety, calming alarm. So when we know that, and then we separate from our babies, when we really push separation, and that anxiety, what's happening when they're crying is they're just protesting that separation. They don't want that. They don't want to be separate from their attachment figure. And so when we allow them to rest in our care, we bring them close to us, and we feel that like release, that like emotional release that they have, like that is beautiful. Honestly, that's what I believe. It's just such a gift to give to your any age child, but especially your baby.
And there's this foundation that you're talking about of like a shift in how we perceive parenting. Of it's parenting's not about meeting an expectation. Parenting is not about like doing what everyone's telling you to do. It's not about control over our child's emotions or their
Right.
sleep or making them conform to any one thing that we think is appropriate. It's about being attached, connected, nurturing so that bond, that being, what's the word I'm looking for? Um being attuned with them,
Yeah.
allow like that gives us the information that we need that guides us for the rest of our parenting journey. When you
Yeah.
start out at the level you're sharing, when you start out parenting your infant, right? In a nurturing way and sleeping and holding and recognizing their cues and leaning in this way, you're creating this foundation in your brain that's restructuring. And if you've listened to some of the previous episodes, we talk about the season of matrescence and that this is the season where we have the greatest restructuring of neural pathways in our brain since the age of 5. You're doing this in a way, you're parenting in a way that's promoting the restructuring of your brain to hold on to parenting in a nurturing way, parenting in a connected way, in a tuned way that's
Right.
going to support you throughout all of the stages that lie ahead that people share are difficult, right? Like we
Right.
share it's difficult when your child's learning how to regulate their emotions.
Right.
That season, I mean, we're adults and we're still figuring it out. But when
Yeah.
they're in the like 2 to 5 age, there's a really big chunk of like, these are big feelings and what do I do with them? And they come out in big ways. You're going to be more attuned to what they're feeling in their body and what they need when you build this attachment and this connection, this attunement with them in
Right.
infancy.
Oh, absolutely. And when your baby is born, that's only the start of that development of that attachment relationship. A lot of times people ask me, there's like a popular doctor who has said like there's the 7 B's of attachment, and if you bed share, breastfeed, baby wear, whatever, all of these things, then that's how you achieve attachment. But that's actually not true at all, because attachment is a relationship. Like I've kind of referred to, it's a dance that you're in with your child that is everlasting. Um, but when you're able to really tune into your baby's need and be responsive to them, and this doesn't mean to completely ignore your needs or that you have to be with them 24/7 and that you can't allow your partner to hold them or a caregiver that's loving. No, it means tuning into what they need, being responsive when they need it. That just starts, that progression into what attachment looks like as they get into later years, because from age 0 to 1, your infant actually attaches to you through the senses. So by being able to smell you, taste you, hear you, like be in your general presence, that is how they attach to you. But once they turn 1, that actually shifts into something different. And 2 and 3, it looks different at all the ages. But when you are able to start off just really listening to your intuition and listening to what your baby is telling you, I feel like that can support, honestly, a lifelong parenting journey
Yes.
where your child will want to turn to you and know you're safe and trust you. And I feel like that opens so much more of an ability to really be there for your child as they get older and experience, all the hardships that life brings.
Yes. And I feel like it's important to call out too that this doesn't just come naturally to everybody, right? And a lot of the parents that I work with have had a difficult season in the postpartum season, and they may struggle with feeling attached or bonded to their child. And it feels like robotic to them to do some of these things that we're suggesting, like sleeping with their baby, like in their arms, having the exhale. Not that we're suggesting that, but that we're talking about.
Yeah.
And I think that it's important to also say, like, there's a period of time in these first few months where you as a human have to build a relationship with your baby too. Just
Mhm.
because you birthed your baby or you have your baby doesn't mean you're automatically going to feel that feeling that is sensationalized around the world of like being so in love with your baby, and you would go through this labor all over again and this
Yeah.
delivery all over again to have them in your arms. Like that's really like romanticized.
Yeah.
uh the reality is that there's a lot of mamas and parents out there who, just like any relationship in the world, they have to fall in love. They have to
Right.
go through this season of getting to know their baby, understanding their cues, understanding their jive. Like there's a transition period that's hard, and it
Mhm.
feels like a lot of sacrifices involved in that, because there is. And there's a shift and change of identity of who was I before this and now I'm your everything. And with that, especially with when it comes to the postpartum season, that can be a lot to wrestle with. And so as you're hearing us talk about this in this way that can feel romanticized, just know that's not the truth. Like it is a process. It is a space of us learning and growing too, and not judging ourselves as we do that, holding grace for ourselves as we stumble through it to figure it out, and not like having this gold star standard that we're trying to work towards, but really
Right.
being able to connect with ourselves. And
Right.
that's what it starts with, is connecting with ourselves to connect with our baby. You can't just all
Absolutely.
of a sudden like be somebody's everything and feel like you lost yourself and then feel whole. Like
Mhm.
there's this piece of how do you get back into your body, right? How do you become embodied so
Mhm.
that you can experience and assess and become attuned to what your baby needs? Because if you're not
Right.
in your body and you're in your head and you're like feeling woo, that ability to understand what your baby needs, that intuition might not come as
Right.
easily.
Absolutely. And I think, on that same note, is that in our society, we have all these expectations. We're going to have our baby and they're going to sleep through the night and they're going to be okay with me putting them down, and they're a newborn. So, I'm going to be able to do all these things, and then my baby will, be happy and survive on their own, to some extreme, to some level. And then your baby arrives and they don't want to be put down and they don't want to sleep by themselves. And all of a sudden, you've gone from a completely individually operating person to someone who is needed 24/7, and you are like, have I showered in 6 days? I don't know.
Mhm.
So those expectations, those like societal things that are out there, when we can really, I feel like, push those to the side and not worry so much about how our baby is sleeping or what they're doing or why they won't let us put them down, and really just tune more into kind of like you said, that development of getting to know your baby, learning their cues, figuring out who they are. I love to recommend like just that fourth trimester, those first like 4 months. It's just a time period for you and your baby to get to know each other. It isn't a time for schedules and routines
Yeah.
and worrying about what they are or aren't doing. It's that time to really explore that new relationship that you were both just born into.
Mm, so beautiful. So tell me a little bit what it looks like when somebody works with you because I imagine I imagine a few things. One is you probably get a handful of parents that are like, "Oh my gosh, I need help like immediately. I don't
Yeah.
know how I can't function like this. I feel overwhelmed." But you also get parents who are like you were, preparing during pregnancy for what sleep is going to look like and
Mhm.
getting educated on what is realistic expectations of like a newborn and their sleep patterns or how frequently they eat or what their brain is doing and why they're waking. Like,
Yeah.
what does it look like when somebody works with you?
Yeah, so I get a wide variety of calls. Often I am getting moms with like brand new babies, like a week old, and they're like, "Oh my gosh, I thought a newborn was supposed to sleep around the clock, and that is not what's happening." And so, with them, it's just really kind of easing their needs. I do teach, I'm sorry, easing their worries, but I do teach classes around the Phoenix area, so West Valley, East Valley, and Central. Really focusing. I do a toddler class, but I mostly focus on newborn sleep. So in that class, taught one last night. We're really focusing on education, the science behind like why your baby is why a baby is sleeping like a baby, kind of all of that. Sleep from an anthropological perspective, sleep from a biological perspective, how
Mm,
feeding plays into that, how attachment and emotion play into that. And then kind of those like common sleep progressions and challenges that you can expect, and tips and tricks for just kind of navigating that first year. The goal of the class really being to bring parents in connection to their intuition. So if they leave the class feeling like they're the expert on their baby, there isn't anyone else out there. I'm sure I have a lot of education and I can help guide you, but you know your baby better than anybody else does.
mhm.
So that's the first thing I do is just education in the form of classes. And then I do take on clients one-on-one. The majority of my clients are parents of babies who are at least 9 months of age. As a baby led sleep specialist, I really believe that sleep should be mostly baby led for the first 9 months of life. So really what that means is just kind of tuning into um, their needs, to their routines, to whatever it is that they're telling us. We kind of just tune into that. Around that 9 month mark is when I feel like that like dance kind of shifts. And so we go from being baby led to a little bit more parent led, where we really need to see the parent step into that more like alpha role. And at this time, oftentimes parents are like, okay, I've been doing this for 9 months. I'm exhausted. I need some help. So I offer parents help, and we really take like a holistic, comprehensive approach where we're looking at the whole family and we're looking at mental health of the family. We're looking at pregnancy and birth. Was there birth trauma? What was their birth experience like? What was the postpartum experience like? We're looking at the parent's sleep hygiene. Is there, sleep apnea, or is anyone open mouth breathing? All of those things. And then we're looking at the baby and we're ruling out any red flags. So, again, if we do see like open mouth posture, if we see really restless sleep, if we see a baby with a lot of discomfort, all of those things can be affecting sleep. So, we want to make sure that we are ruling out and addressing any of those underlying causes of disruption to sleep. And then once we've done that, then we can work together on shifting patterns. Everything that I do is attachment focused. So, people always say, well, what's your method? I don't have a method. My method is me and you are working together to figure out your baby and what they need. Sometimes it's something like we just need to shift a pattern of parents are feeding back to sleep in the middle of the night every single time. Nothing wrong with that. But maybe we need to incorporate some additional sleep associations. So we kind of need to build in that sleep association ladder so baby can be supported to sleep in an alternate way. Making sure we're involving the partner in that. So, anyways, I could talk about it forever, but it's kind of like we're looking at the whole family, and then we're looking at the red flags, and then we're making the sleep plan, putting the parent into that expert role, making sure that's in line with their intuition, and then helping them walk through that process.
That sounds so magical and necessary. And I
Yes.
think what's like you highlighted the word comprehensive, like it truly sounds comprehensive. Like I'm
Yeah,
not going to walk away if I work with you, I'm not going to walk away confused. I'm not going to walk away empty-handed. Like there's
right,
all like when you look at the whole picture like that, you're getting to the roots, right?
right,
You're trying to understand like the root of it and how do we treat the root of it because it could be so many things.
right. And I don't, similar to how I feel about like medical things, I don't want to slap a band-aid on it. It's kind of like sleep training, right? Like we can kind of like ignore what's going on and then we can just do separation based like sleep training methods, but that doesn't really address the root of like why what your baby is seeking. And maybe they're just seeking comfort, or maybe that is that red flag going on that's causing them to be more wakeful, to cause them to be just
Mhm.
uncomfortable at night. When we can address that, they'll sleep so much better. I've walked this process with my second child. Who it's like interesting because I work as a sleep specialist and then you have your own baby and you're like, okay, like it's harder to be so close to the situation. I've definitely reached out to, a few people who also do this work, like, okay, help me like process through this. But yeah, identifying my own son's red flags and then going from a baby who woke every 2 hours to now, mostly sleeping through the night. But, that was like a very slow and gentle process that we had to walk. So I just really love to help parents find the root and then help them work together. Like you and I work together to figure out, okay, how do we want to approach this?
Motherhood is a beautiful journey, but it can also be overwhelming. Do you often find yourself feeling isolated, struggling to find balance, and yearning for a sense of identity beyond mom? Trust me, you're not alone. Join the Empowered Mamas Club, where you'll discover a supportive community of like minded mothers. Gain valuable skills to navigate those highs and lows of motherhood, reclaim your sense of self, and become the engaged and present mom that you desire so that you can create cherished moments with your little ones. It's time to prioritize your well being and rediscover the joy in motherhood. Click the link in the show notes and join us in the Empowered Mamas Club today. Yes. So you mentioned that your classes are in person in the greater Phoenix area.
Yeah.
Do you offer online classes too?
So it's fun. I don't have any like courses that you can just like log into and take, although I have one in the works right now. So that should be released probably within the next 6 months or so. So that will just be like a log on at your own pace, all about newborn sleep, getting that education. But then and then like I said, I do teach in person, and I'm actually thinking of creating a virtual option where it would still be like you join us on Monday night at 6 p.m., but everyone's virtual because I've been finding that a lot of people are requesting that. So I'm thinking about probably about 6 weeks. I'm going to be hosting a virtual option. That would be, of course, for anyone anywhere in the United States to access.
That would be so powerful. I know a lot of our listeners aren't just in Arizona, they're all over
Okay.
the United States, and a lot of them are actually in Canada too. And
Oh
so,
wow.
having opportunities for people who are hearing this to have access to you as a resource, I think is
Yes.
invaluable. So, how do
Yes.
we find you? What do we do to find you, locate you?
Yeah.
Tell us all about that.
Okay, so my Instagram, I post lots of like free content, free resources, talking about things like split nights and early rising, and just giving, like some easy tips and tricks on my Instagram, which is at Holistic Mama Sleep. Everything's the same. So at Holistic Mama Sleep. My website is www.holisticmamasleep.com. And you can also email me, Lauren at holisticmamasleep.com. I have a blog on my website, which has feeling the pressures of two children and all the things. So it's not as commonly updated as it used to be. But I do have a lot of helpful blog posts just on navigating like very common sleep challenges. And then I have some like free resources on like a sleep progression guide and a wake window guide. So lots of different things that you can, just poke around and access. And then I also run on Instagram. I run a group, like a chat group for postpartum moms. So we talk a lot about sleep, but we talk about all the things in there as well. Just kind of like a resource to ask other moms, like, oh my gosh, my baby is doing this. Can anyone relate? So if anyone's interested in joining that, you can always message me and I can add you to our group as well.
Oh, that is perfect. I will include the link to your website and your Instagram and your email in the show notes of this podcast so everyone can easily like click on it and find you.
Perfect.
Before we, sorry,
I
go
was just
ahead.
gonna say, so if anyone is at the place where they're like, whether maybe you have a newborn or you have a 3-month old and you just kind of want to talk through some things, um, you can reach out. And then, like I said, like that 9-month age, if you're looking for support, or up to age 5 really is the ages that I work with. But I offer a free discovery call. So on my website, you can click the link and then you can sign up for a free 15-minute call where you can kind of share your current concerns. I can let you know how my services work. We can see if that's a good match, and then go ahead and book you for something if that is what makes sense.
Oh, that is so perfect. Thank you so much. Is there
Yeah.
anything, any like wisdom before we end our podcast together that you want to share?
Gosh, I mean, so much, but I really think so human babies are only born with 25% of their adult brain intact, compared to all other primates in the world who are born with 60% at a minimum of 60%. So if you picture like a birth that you've seen of a mammal, like a giraffe, right, being born, I'm pretty sure they get up and start walking within minutes. But our human babies are literally virtually helpless. They cannot survive without us. And they spend that first year of life in such a huge leap of development that it makes so much sense that our babies literally need us to survive, to grow, to thrive, to calm that central nervous system, to co-regulate. So when we really can lean into that information, I feel like it allows us to have way less expectations and to really accept what the need is that our babies are expressing, which is really just to be in close proximity to us or a caregiver at all times.
That is so well said. And it reminds me of what you said earlier about humans are, I'm going to mess up the word probably, external gestation or gestation. What did
Yeah,
you call it?
exterogestators.
So, being an gestator, no wonder we want the outside to feel like the inside. When
Yeah.
they're in our arms, they want it to be reminiscent of what's on the inside. They're still in that gestational period. They
Yeah.
want to feel as close to us as possible. That's where the skin to skin conversation comes in. And
Yes.
I'm guessing now the exhale and the smell of you and all of that being as connected to you as possible because they're still in the gestational period.
Right. Yep. Absolutely.
Beautiful. Well, Lauren, thank you so much for gracing us with your presence and your wisdom on this podcast. I appreciate you, and I'm so excited for the listeners to be able to have access and know about you and have a resource to help through this difficult time of sleeping in the first year in general, where I feel like sleep is such a commonly discussed topic. So thank you so, so much.
Yes, absolutely. Thank you so much for having me. I love talking about all things sleep.
It has been an honor to share this space with you today on the Empower to Heal podcast, where we illuminate the strength you have within yourself to heal. Make sure you subscribe so you don't miss our upcoming episodes and leave us a review on your favorite podcast platform.